What's going on, everyone? We are back with a video that a ton of people have been sending me, the Sony FX3 Mark II. Rumors are coming fast and furious. Is this camera coming? We're going to react to a video from Judson Robertson. People have been sending this over to me saying, hey, is this camera coming? What's the latest with Sony? So let's check it out. Let's see what's going on with the FX3 and its potential bigger brother, newer brother, the FX3 Mark II. Let's jump in. We'll see what Judson Robertson has to say in this awesome video about the FX3 Mark II.
February 23, 2021. That is the original release date of the Sony FX3, which has a lot of us wondering when we might see the Sony FX3 Mark II or the Sony FX, who knows what Sony will call it, but I think...
So just to kind of set this up, the FX3 Mark I, the original Sony FX3, has been out for about 3 years now, which is a long time for cameras, and you would expect Sony to come out with something new. Now, I just did a video, which I'll link here, about the A7 Mark IV, sorry, the A7V, the A7 Mark V. That camera is rumored as well, but this would be the tier above that. So we're talking the same camera level as the A7S III, the FX3. These cameras are very similar. They've been out a similar amount of time, almost 3 years. So an upgrade is likely to come soon. Let's keep this going.
I think there's a lot of filmmakers out there that just want to know when the next camera is going to be released. I myself actually bought the Sony A7S III about a year before that, or 6 months before that, which is very similar to the Sony FX3, just has...
A lot of people are saying, because these cameras are so similar, that the next upgrade we see could either be the A7S IV, which I'm planning to do another video on, or the FX3 Mark II. So one of these cameras could get the upgrade, the other could fall behind. We may not see another A7S if the FX3 gets a Mark II. Just because these cameras are so similar, Sony may decide to only go down one path here.
A little bit of a different body, and I've been looking to pick up the FX3 over the last 6 months, but I'm kind of like waiting. I'm in that limbo trying to see if we get any new news from Sony about the Sony FX3 Mark II. There's been some rumors saying that it was going to come out kind of towards the end of 2024 or the beginning of 2025, but there's still nothing 100% confirmed. So I guess time will tell on that camera. But that all being said, in today's video, I'm going to be covering some of the rumored features and also throw in what features I would like to see on the new Sony FX3 Mark II.
Let me just give a quick shout out to Judson here. He's got an awesome YouTube channel. I'll link it below. Check him out, subscribe to his channel, like the video. He's making incredible content about these cameras, so you got to give him a follow and check out his content.
So the Sony FX3 is already a great camera. It has a very nice sensor. It shoots 4K 10-bit, and legitimate Hollywood box office movies have been filmed on this camera, specifically the creator. So already holding a really great camera, what type of features could potentially be released on a new version of this FX3, and what would make this camera just an absolute game changer? So the first feature that is rumored, and also a feature that I would really like to see, is actually a global shutter. So without getting too technical, what a global shutter is, it would allow you to get really quick movements and kind of avoid a common issue called rolling shutter. And to just kind of dive deeper into that problem, what rolling shutter is that, let's say that you are shooting something and you make a quick movement to the left or a quick movement in and out, you'll start to see a little bit of shakiness and just like a not really clean image when you're not using a global shutter. So I'm not sure if they'll be able to actually fit that into a small body like the FX3, but
you see this issue happen in a lot of DSLR and mirrorless cameras now. When they're smaller, you don't get this global shutter. I've seen some rumors this could come with an upgraded FX3 camera. I'm not sold that it's actually going to happen. We'll see how it comes in and what the price point would be, but I think we'd have to make the camera body a little bit bigger to fit in that global shutter. But again, without knowing what this camera might look like, it's hard to tell. That would be a fantastic upgrade for the FX3.
But if they can, I think that would be a huge plus to the camera. Moving into the next feature that I would like to see is that I would like to see an upgraded sensor. So the sensor that the FX3 currently has now is the same sensor that the Sony a7S3 has had, and they released that camera back in 2020. So at the time of making this video, that means that that sensor is over 4 years old. Looking at some of the other Sony cameras that are currently on the market and that have been released over the last few years, there has been some upgrades on their sensors. So I'd like to see some of those capabilities on the new Sony FX3 Mark II whenever they do, or if they ever do release the camera.
See, again, I'm going to reiterate this. It's funny that there's two cameras on the same tier, the A7S3 and the FX3, that have the same camera sensor. We're totally due for an upgrade in this line. I think it's definitely coming. I think we will 100% see an upgraded sensor when this camera, if this camera comes out.
This would just basically produce a even better image quality than we already currently have. And not to say that the FX3 already has a killer image quality and a killer look, but this would just be the cream of the crop and make this camera even better. The next feature that I would really like to see on the Sony FX3 Mark II would be internal NDs. Now guys, I'm not sure also if they're going to be able to add this to such a small camera. There's not too many cameras at this caliber or this size that actually do have internal NDs. The only one that I can think of would be the Blackmagic Pocket 6K Pro, which is a lot bigger and a lot thicker of a body compared to the Sony FX3.
Here's the thing about the Sony FX3 is that Sony classifies it in its cinema line. So it's packed in with all these other cinema cameras they have, and it's the smallest in the line. But you would think that in a cinema camera, you'd want to have these internal NDs. I mean, the beginning of the cinema cameras over at Canon with the C100 had built-in ND filters. So you're going to want to find this. I think this would be a great upgrade. Again, we're going to have to make the build actually a little bit bigger, so hard to know where we'd go. It'd be interesting to see how this camera is going to look, but I do think the internal NDs would be a fantastic upgrade, especially for a camera in the so-called cinema line.
However, I do think that a lot of filmmakers would just go crazy about internal NDs. I actually own the Sony FX6, and let me tell you guys, having internal ND filters just makes my life so much easier when I'm filming.
Very helpful.
As I don't have to worry about putting another filter on top of my lens. The fourth feature that I would really like to see on this new camera, if possible, would be some sort of RAW, Sony Raw. Now I know there's like a patent and there's some issues with actually filming, internal RAW on some of these cameras due to Red having that patent and all that sort of stuff. But if Sony would be able to get around it by having their own version of RAW or something close to RAW in their cameras, in their cinema cameras, that would be another absolute game changer. As one of the reasons that I still film on Blackmagic is because Blackmagic does have their own version called B-RAW, and although it's not true RAW,
as an entry-level cinema camera, I don't need the full RAW on this camera, but if they could do it, that'd be a great upgrade.
Shoot this type of RAW, you can shoot ProRes RAW by connecting the FX3 to an external monitor, specifically one of the Ninja 5s. But if you'd be able to do it just straight out of the camera, I think that would be an absolute game changer and a plus, especially for me. Now, the last feature that I would really like to see on this camera would be some sort of 8K or 4K at a higher frame rate. Now, I don't think that is absolutely necessary at this current time and state, especially based on, all the cameras on the market and just 4K being streamed on the current phones and monitors that we have. But if the camera did have the capability of shooting at 8K or shooting at a 4K 240 frame per second, guys, this would be a camera that you could pretty much keep in your camera bag for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or even 10 years down the road. That would just be another
in some ways, that's the issue. Do these companies, does Sony, for example, want to make that big leap, say 8K 60 FPS, or say 4K 240 FPS? I mean, it would make an incredible camera here, but where do we then upgrade down the road? Do they want everyone to get this camera and have it in their bag for years, or do they want to sell more slowly getting better cameras over the next chunk of years? It's a bit of a dilemma. We, the consumer, would love to see exactly what he's saying, that 8K high frame rate, but hard to know if they'll actually want to make that big of a leap in a camera like this.
The crop making this camera an absolute game changer. So yeah, just based on all the features that I just kind of went over, of course, that would be super cool to see it on the new version of this camera. Some of them are realistic, some of them are not realistic. Let me know down on the comments down below what you guys.
So again, this was Judson Robertson. Check his link below. He's got a great video and a whole bunch of amazing videos on his YouTube channel. But as for the FX3, hard to know if we're going to get a Mark II soon. If I had to wager, I think it's coming. I do think that maybe by the holiday season or early 2025, we might be talking about this camera as a real deal possibility. And I do also think that if the FX3 Mark II comes, we may not be seeing an A7S III Mark II or an A7S IV, whatever you want to call it, because I don't think they need both of these cameras in their lineup. They're very, very similar. You might as well go with the actual kind of cinema format, and then you have your cameras in the line like the A7 III, the A7 IV, potential A7 V, where you can get some more hybrid type cameras where you're getting video, but you're also getting high megapixel photos. So these are just my thoughts. Let me know in the comments what you think. Would you like to see this camera? Would you not like to see this camera? And what features do you want on it? Subscribe to the channel, and we'll check you back in the next one.